So very good morning and welcome back to another video. Welcome to the weird and wonderful world of infrared photography. So you're looking at me now through the eyes of my infrared converted Fuji XE-1. It is a 720nm conversion, and as you can see, my dark black clothing and my eyes look very, very odd. I look like a bit of an alien. But before we get into the video, I need to give a little bit of context as to what we are doing today. So way back in the summer months, when it was a bit warmer than it is today, I picked up this. So this is an infrared filter. So you screw this onto the front of your lens and it lets through infrared radiation. Now, the problem I had with that was the 5D that I was using wasn't converted of any kind. It was just a normal 5D. And the filter is akin to a very strong 10-stop filter, so it lets very, very little light through. So if you imagine this, you've got an infrared filter coming through, letting very, very little amounts of infrared radiation through, hitting a sensor that has an infrared filter in front of it, and you can see where the problem's going. So we ended up with very long exposures and very noisy images, but it did give me an idea of the infrared look to images, and I quite liked that, so we picked up the Fuji XE-1. So let's get stuck in and go have a play and see the world through the eyes of a different kind of camera. Alright, so before we start taking any new photos today, I want to revisit the first and only composition that I was happy with my infrared filter on my Canon 5D. So as you can see, it did end up being a little bit of a long exposure, but I was able to pull some false colour out of this, and I did quite like how it looked in the end. It's just such a shame it was a very grainy, noisy, long exposure photograph. So I thought, wouldn't it be fun just to come back and take it again with a proper infrared converted camera. Now, as you're going to see on the back of this camera, there is a very, very strong red cast, but that is very, very simple and very, very easy to remove. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in and I'm going to throw on a black and white film simulation. And that is basically, it's going to give me an idea of how the image is going to look when I edit it on the computer. Now, the raw file, when I import it onto the computer, it's still going to have a red cast. Well, that's just something you play around with the white balance and then convert to black and white, so it's a non-issue. So let's go ahead and let's take this photograph. So here we go. So the ISO I've chosen is ISO 200, basically because that is the base ISO on this camera. f5 and an 80th of a second. 2-second timer. Okay, so let's get geeky for a minute and talk about the camera. So it's a Fuji XE-1, 16 megapixels, and aside from that, I don't really know an awful lot about it. It's just a novelty camera that I picked up. So when I bought the camera, it did come with a Samyang 21mm f1.4 lens, which I have with me and we may have a play with. So I was quite pleased it came with a lens, as it allowed me just to go out and start shooting before this adapter came for the Canon lenses. So I am using Canon glass. The adapter, it works, so you get aperture control, stabilization for the stabilized lenses, and autofocus. But the autofocus, it kind of comes with a twist and a caveat. It's not the fastest and it doesn't always lock on, but I don't think that's a fault of this adapter. I think it's to do with the infrared conversion. I've not really been out and used it on a bright sunny day when there's a lot of infrared radiation and light about. So if you focus on something that's just flat and very little texture, it doesn't really lock on, it hunts around and doesn't really capture the focus. But if you have like a dark branch against the white sky where there's something with a lot of contrast, it will lock on fairly quickly and fairly accurately doing that. So I don't think it's the fault of the adapter. I think it's probably more a result of the conversion, but I'm going to hang on to it anyway because I have a plan early next year which will involve another Fuji camera without the conversion. So next target is that orange tree there. I thought that might like quite fun because it's obviously still got quite a lot of leaves on it and hopefully they'll be nice and bright white reflecting the infrared light. So let's get set up. I'm going to take a picture of the orange tree. Okay, so I think I've worked this one out. So I'm using the Canon 51A, and because it's an APS-C size sensor, 1.5 conversion, we're shooting about 75mm. So what I've decided I want to do, and if you can see it, there is just a really dark trunk of this tree, and all the orange leaves are coming through bright white on the infrared camera. So I want to get the trunk at the bottom of the frame and I just want to fill the rest of it with the trees, so you're going to have all the white leaves shining through with all the dark branches behind. So instead of giving the tree some negative space around it and leaving the tree open, I just want to absolutely just fill the frame with this tree. So let's go ahead and we'll take the shot. So one thing that I have noticed works best with this is to have the exposure compensation on -1. If you have it on 0, it tends to look really overexposed. So -1 stop, it kind of gives the best result here. So I want to get down nice and low to begin with. I'll focus on the branch, on the trunk even. I'll just leave a little bit of grass in there as well, I think, just to give a bit of a foreground. And there we go. I will show that image to you, because that's the kind of guy that I am, you see. So before we move on and take another photograph, I want to welcome you to the first episode of Chris Complains About a Camera Because It's Not a Canon. So do you know when you're in a shooting mode? So the camera is currently set in program mode, but I want to be in shutter speed priority mode. How do I do that? Now on a Canon camera, there's a dial at the top and you twist it and you put it to STV, whatever it is, and you're in that shooting mode. On this, no, it's not like that. So because we're in program mode, I now have to turn the dial at the top to put it in shutter speed priority mode, but it only gives me certain shutter speeds, and then I have to use the arrow keys on the back to get third stops in between them. And then it gets even more confusing because now I want to be in aperture priority mode. So I then have to choose the scrolly wheel all the way through the aperture that I want, but then I have to put the shutter speed back into automatic mode, and now we get aperture priority mode. And if I want manual mode, I now have to take the shutter speed that I actually want, and I have to turn the aperture wheel all the way from program mode all the way through f22 and all the way to whatever I want it, and it's confusing. My brain's exploded and I'm going home to cry. What was wrong with the simple mode dial? So if you remember back to the start of the video when I mentioned about this adapter and the autofocus, this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about. You see how it really struggled to lock onto focus there, and we had to do it a few times before it clicked on. But here we go, we're taking a photograph of Dave's tree. So there's just a bank. Oh, there we go. I moved my finger and the autofocus moved again. This is really painful at times. Sometimes found that if you give it a bit of a manual focus just to get it into place, try again, it sometimes works. So like I was saying, this is Dave's tree. There's a bank of 3 of them. This is the middle one. It looks quite nice. So we're at f6.3, ISO 200, 100th of a second, and I'm just using a 10-second countdown timer because the 70-200mm lens that I'm using here is so long and so heavy. I just want the camera just to settle on the tripod. Right, so I've been out here now for about 4 hours and I'm really starting to get cold now. It's down to about 4 degrees and the wind's just picked up a little bit as well, so there's a bit of a breeze rolling through and it's quite chilly. My feet are also wet because I'm wearing trainers. There's a wind turbine there. Will it work? No. I don't know. The autofocus, I think it's maybe to do with the lack of light around today. We'll try again on a bright sunny day and see how we get on. But yeah, I'm cold and I think it's time to wrap this up. So not ideal conditions for infrared photography today. I am going to admit that. It's probably best suited for a nice bright sunny summer's day, you know, when the trees are in full greenery, a couple of little white wispy clouds floating around in the sky. That's probably where this camera's going to see some use next summer, because that's mainly what I bought it for, you know, in the middle of summer when everything's green. It's just green everywhere. I thought we'd eliminate the green and turn it white and make it quite fun. So yeah, when we get to the summer months, you'll probably see this camera in action a little bit more. But for now, I just wanted to get out, have a play with it, see how the images looked, and just see how I got on with it. And it's been quite good fun. It's definitely a different way of looking at the world, especially when you're looking through the viewfinder and everything's bright white that shouldn't be white. And obviously you saw at the start of the video that all my dark clothing was white, my eyes turned dark black. Really, it's a different kind of photography, and I'm looking forward to getting stuck in, obviously when the weather changes next year. So I think I'm going to go home and get warmed up and start putting all this together into a video for you to, you know, watch. So yeah, I'm loving and leaving, and I'm saying thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy it, please give it a thumbs up because it does help the video out when it brings new viewers to see my content. And you like it more than that, there's a subscribe button below me. You can press that and you'll see nonsense from me every single week. How lucky are you? So until the next time, I'm leaving, say peace and goodbye.